For many decades, ever since the Voyager and Galileo probes beamed back the first detailed images to Earth, humanity has gazed at Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, with a burning mixture of enduring hope and almost manic scientific obsession. Against the backdrop of the gas giant's colossal, raging ammonia storms, this relatively small sphere, scarred by a complex web of rusty red ridges, ice hummocks, and cyclopean fissures, seemed the ultimate enigma. Astrophysicists and biologists had long reached a unified conclusion. The true value of this world is hidden far beneath its lifeless surface, which is relentlessly bombarded by Jupiter's lethal radiation. There, beneath a multi-mile, impenetrable shell of ancient ice, pulses a colossal, pitch-black subsurface ocean. Heated from within by monstrous tidal forces and gravitational friction, this abyssal reservoir of salty liquid water holds more volume than all of Earth's oceans combined. In its impenetrable depths, where superheated hydrothermal vents are calculated to erupt, lies our holy grail, the most promising, highly probable candidate for harboring extraterrestrial life in the entire solar system. We sought to pierce this ice not for the sake of mining resources, nor out of a vain thirst for territorial expansion. The sole objective was to obtain an answer to the oldest, most fundamental, and terrifying philosophical question that has haunted our species since the first humans looked up at the night sky. Are we alone in this infinite, indifferent void? To settle this question forever, the planet's leading space agencies pooled their resources and genius to create an absolute marvel of engineering. What was slated to head to the launch pad was not merely a research probe, but the most complex, autonomous, and obsessively sterilized spacecraft ever to escape our planet's gravity well. Scientists and engineers were bound by the strictest planetary protection protocols in the history of spaceflight. The fear of accidentally introducing even the simplest Earth-born biological life into this pristine, isolated ecosystem escalated into sheer paranoia. The probe's creators faced an incredible paradox. They had to build highly intricate, fragile quantum sensors and genetic analyzers, and then subject them to merciless torture to guarantee absolute sterility. Before the spacecraft was carefully sealed within the airtight payload fairing of the launch vehicle, every single microchip, every tiny screw, bundle of wires, and centimeter of titanium hull went through a hellish purification process. The probe was repeatedly bathed in corrosive vaporized hydrogen peroxide, baked in specialized vacuum ovens at extreme temperatures that would melt ordinary plastic and irradiated with lethal, destructive doses of gamma radiation. The final assembly took place in the highest class, ultra clean rooms, where engineers in bulky hazmat suits with independent breathing systems worked in an environment filtered to ensure the complete absence of organics. All these grueling, impossibly expensive precautions served one single, truly sacred purpose: to provide an absolute guarantee that not a single Earth microbe, microscopic spore, or tenacious extremophile bacteria could survive the journey to contaminate the pristine purity of Europa's abyss. We wanted to arrive in this alien dark world not as invaders carrying the biological filth and chaos of our home planet on our boots, but as silent, respectful guests. This mission was conceived and executed as our cleanest, most noble, and ethically flawless step into the terrifying cosmic unknown. Following years of navigation through the relentless, crushing silence of interplanetary space, and having successfully endured the invisible lethal torrents of Jupiter's magnetosphere, The heavily shielded landing craft achieved its first impossible objective, a flawless soft touchdown on Europa's chaos terrain. The surface was a nightmare of fractured ice ridges, blinding white plains, and deep, reddish brown scars, all constantly bathed in the eerie, lethal glow of the gas giant looming in the sky. Without a moment's hesitation, the primary lander deployed its payload, the nuclear powered thermal drill, often referred to as the cryobot. This masterpiece of thermal engineering, encased in a reinforced titanium tungsten alloy, immediately activated its internal reactor. It began to glow cherry red, generating intense heat that allowed it to commence its slow, agonizing vertical descent. For weeks, the probe bored through miles of ancient, supercompressed, high density glacial formations, ice so old it predated the existence of the human species itself. The farther it sank into the crust, the deeper the silence became, leaving behind the chaotic surface environment of the solar system and entering a realm of absolute isolation. Finally, after penetrating countless distinct layers of planetary history, the cryobot's advanced forward looking sonar registered a sudden, dramatic drop in resistance directly beneath its nose cone. With a final, violent hiss of steam, the drill breached the ultimate barrier, slipping from the solid ice crust and plunging into the colossal, lightless expanse below. The autonomous hydrobot, the sophisticated aquatic explorer housed within the cryobot's chassis, immediately disengaged. It activated its passive navigation lights, illuminating perhaps only a few dozen meters of the crystal clear water before the light was completely devoured by the surrounding infinite void. This was an ocean that had been sealed, silent, and starved of starlight for billions of years, a world of suffocating darkness and immense hydrostatic pressure. Responding precisely to its complex internal algorithms, the hydrobot stabilized itself in the alien current and gracefully extended its highly articulation, pristine manipulator arm. It was a sterile instrument designed to minimize any disturbance to the water column. Its intake valve opened with a whisper quiet mechanical click, capturing the very first sample of deep water brine in human history. Deep inside the hydrobot's pressurized titanium hull, the miniaturized, state of the art automated genetic laboratory, a technological marvel the size of a shoebox, immediately began the complex process of microfluidic analysis. As the hydrobot slowly navigated the abyssal currents, the lab commenced sequencing whatever microscopic organic material was suspended within the ancient water, preparing the resulting raw data packets to be beamed across the vast distance to awaiting breathless mission control on Earth. Inside the cavernous, dimly lit control room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the atmosphere was thick enough to choke on. The air hummed with the electric tension of 100 brilliant minds holding their collective breath, bathed in the pale, sterile glow of towering telemetry monitors. The sheer physics of the solar system dictated an agonizing wait. It took nearly 40 excruciating minutes for a radio signal to cross the hundreds of millions of miles of hard vacuum between Jupiter and Earth. When the massive parabolic dishes of the deep space network finally caught the faint, degraded ping piercing through the gas giant's roaring radiation belts, a collective, shuddering gasp rippled through the room. The first encrypted data packets from the hydrobot's miniaturized genetics sequencer began to cascade across the primary 3D screens in endless streams of raw code. For one fleeting, intoxicating fraction of a second, the room erupted. Fists slammed onto desks in triumph, and tears of historical validation welled in the eyes of veteran astrobiologists. Humanity had reached into the Stygian depths of an alien ocean and found complex organics. But that blinding euphoria evaporated almost instantaneously, violently replaced by a cold, paralyzing confusion. The main tactical display, programmed to visualize the real time bioinformatic analysis, abruptly flashed a blinding, alarming crimson. The astrobiologists, who had dedicated their entire professional lives to preparing for this singular, epoch defining moment, had meticulously calibrated their expectations. They were mentally prepared for the bizarre, primitive, exotic extremophiles clinging to hydrothermal vents, weird amino acids featuring reversed chirality, or alternative nucleotide chains utilizing a completely alien chemical alphabet totally divorced from the terrestrial model. At worst, they were braced for a blind result, a complex, organic soup devoid of the spark of true biological organization. Instead, the cutting edge sequencing software, powered by the agency's most robust supercomputers, delivered neither a joyful confirmation of alien biology nor a disappointing zero. Without warning, the automated safety algorithms forcefully locked out the terminal outputs, throwing a catastrophic, logically impossible database alignment error. The system was frantically flagging a severe contamination breach. Total sample contamination, the mission director whispered, the color draining from his face as he stared at the flashing red diagnostic. It was the only rational, albeit career ending, explanation. Desperate commands were immediately beamed back across the void. The control room ordered the Hydrobot to initiate emergency purge protocols. The probe obediently flushed its microscopic fluidic channels with highly toxic, pressurized solvents, cleared its intake chambers, and descended deeper into the crushing blackness to capture a pristine secondary sample. Another hour of agonizing, breathless waiting passed. The automated lab ran the complex polymerase chain reaction sequence again, then a third time, and then a fourth, utilizing backup chemical reagents and scanning the alien water mere inches from the abyssal seafloor. Yet, as each new data packet traversed the immense gulf of space, it only ruthlessly hammered another nail into the coffin of scientific consensus. The chilling results remained stubbornly, absolutely fixed. There was no sensor ghost, no software glitch, and no earthborne microbe that could have survived the hellish pre-launch sterilization to replicate in this frozen darkness. When the system's administrators finally initiated a manual override of the error protocols and forced the raw genomic visualization onto the colossal main screens, the control room descended into a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. The staggering multi-dimensional sequence alignment graphs did not display a distant, convergent, evolutionary cousin. It was a flawless, mathematically perfect match. All 3.2 billion base pairs, the telomeric structures, the mitochondrial markers, and even the supposedly non-coding juncta aligned with terrifying, unmistakable precision. The complex organic material pulled from the lightless ancient depths of Europa was perfectly, undeniably human. Total panic, raw, visceral, and completely unscientific, violently gripped the JPL Mission Control Center. The initial silence was shattered by a cacophony of frantic, overlapping voices as systems engineers and astrobiologists desperately scrambled to find a flaw in the telemetry. It had to be contamination. It was the only psychological lifeline they had left. The flight director ordered an immediate, exhaustive audit of the pre-launch sterilization manifests, demanding that the radiation dosimeter logs from the spacecraft's assembly be pulled from the encrypted archives. For 20 agonizing minutes, the massive server farm processed the historical data, cross referencing every chemical bath, every ultraviolet sweep, and every gamma ray bombardment the hydrobot had endured before leaving Earth. When the final report materialized on the main displays, it severed their last thread of denial. The quantum sensors confirmed the isotopic signature of the surrounding water matrix. The heavy oxygen and trace elements were undeniably, exclusively native to Europa. The DNA had not hitched a ride from Florida. It had been waiting for them in the abyssal dark. As the horrifying reality fully set in, the collective paradigm of the room fractured. You could almost hear the fundamental pillars of evolutionary biology, anthropology, and human history crumbling to dust. Decades of textbook science, from Darwin's primordial soup to the fossil records of the Cambrian explosion, were suddenly cast into a terrifying new light. If humanity's genetic blueprint existed perfectly preserved in an alien ocean billions of years older than the first hominids, then the entire narrative of Earth was a lie. Earth was never our birthplace. We did not slowly crawl out of the warm, sunlit tide pools of a blue planet, gradually evolving through natural selection. The ice-locked, irradiated sphere of Europa was the original, ancient laboratory. The implications began to crash over the scientists in suffocating waves. If Europa was the lab, what was Earth? The answer was evident in our own violent, blood-soaked history. Earth was a distant, isolated containment zone, a massive planetary prison. We were an apex species engineered with terrifying flaws, highly aggressive, instinctively destructive, violently tribal, and capable of multiplying with the speed of a viral contagion. Recognizing the threat of their own creation, our unknown architects had banished us. They had exiled the failed, dangerous experiment to the inner solar system, dropping us onto a resource-rich but safely quarantined rock, millions of miles away from the pristine, ordered perfection of their European laboratory. All of our wars, our empires, our desperate reach for the stars, it was nothing but the restless pacing of inmates within a beautifully disguised cosmic cell. We hadn't crossed the void of space to discover alien life. We had simply picked the lock of our cage, only to find our own creator's abandoned petri dish floating in the dark. But the paralyzing, existential terror of our true cosmic origins was destined to be fleeting, violently eclipsed by a much more physical, immediate threat. Inside the hushed confines of mission control, the Hydrobot's live audio feed, previously a steady, hypnotic hiss of abyssal currents and microscopic ice collisions, suddenly spiked into the red. The acoustic sensors registered a deafening, unnatural low-frequency groan. It was a sound so profoundly deep and structurally resonant that it bypassed the station's speakers entirely, vibrating directly through the floorboards and into the bones of the terrified engineers. This was no shifting tectonic plate, nor was it the organic call of some blind, deep-sea leviathan. It possessed a terrifyingly rhythmic, mechanical cadence, an artificial thrum that echoed relentlessly across the entire lightless expanse of Europa's global ocean. As the ominous reverberations intensified, shaking the Hydrobot so violently that its delicate manipulator arms retracted in auto-preservation mode, the horrifying reality of their actions crystallized. By melting a tunnel through miles of ancient ice with a howling, nuclear-powered thermal drill, humanity hadn't just conducted a benign scientific experiment. We had effectively taken a sledgehammer to a vault door. We had actively, noisily breached the ultimate cosmic quarantine. On the main tactical displays, the passive sonar telemetry arrays began to paint a picture of utter doom. Massive, incomprehensible anomalies were suddenly blooming on the screens. These were not scattered schools of extremophiles or thermal plumes. They were colossal biomechanical signatures, each the size of a terrestrial skyscraper, rising with impossible speed and synchronized precision from the deepest, unexplored abyssal trenches. They were awakening from an eons long slumber. The ancient, unfathomable wardens of Europa had been dormant, lying in wait beneath the crush of the black water, programmed to monitor the silent, icy seal of their laboratory. Now, the seismic shockwaves and radioactive heat of the human drill had triggered their alarms. They had detected the containment breach as the terrifyingly massive contacts ascended inexorably toward the fragile, glowing hydrobot. The final, chilling truth dawned on the paralyzed scientists watching from millions of miles away. The wardens now knew that the violent, aggressive prisoners exiled to the third planet had finally learned how to pick the lock, and they were ascending from the dark to permanently reset the experiment.